which is not to say I don't love, and it's not a ding on anybody, it's not a poo-pooing on anybody, this tech company called Snooper, and they are doing a retreat. It's called Snoop, not Snooper. Rookie. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. I wanted to pop on today to do a quick video to recap something that I said I was going to do at the beginning of 2021. And there were 3 books that came out in pretty quick succession that were isolated thrillers set in the Alps. And I was like, I'm gonna read all 3 of them and then I will let you guys know what I think. And last year I read 2 of them, but I finally finished book 3. So I wanted to let you guys know what I think. But I do think there is a book for everyone, and I think that certain books will hit on certain tropes and certain things that you might like in a book. So my hope is that by talking about these 3, I will help you figure out which book is your go-to isolated Alps mystery. So no surprises here. I'm going to talk about One by One by Ruth Ware, The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, and Shiver by Ali Reynolds. And all 3 of these books, like I said, came out last year. They have all the snowy, isolated, creepy vibes. I would not reserve any of them necessarily just for winter. They are all good for reading any time of year. But I'm going to talk about them in the order that I read them and then give you guys kind of some final thoughts, feelings, and all the fun stuff in between. And obviously, if you guys have watched my channel, then you know how I feel about the 3 of these books. But I will also say, now that I have read all 3 of them and I'm looking back at them, I feel like my perspective has changed in some ways. So not necessarily my rating at the time or anything like that, but I feel like I have like a much better aerial view now that I've read the 3. And I'm treating them as like a fake series, but it's my trifecta of winter recommendations. So the first book I read was One by One by Ruth Ware, and you guys know she is a fave author of mine. I did an entire video just about her, and she is auto-buy all the things. I just love her to pieces. And yes, her new book, The It Girl, is on my auto-buy list for 2022. Video to follow. But anyway, this book is set in the French Alps, and this follows a group of work colleagues who work for this tech company called Snoop, which is like this music app where you can follow everyday people and you can follow celebrities and you can see what music, what song they're listening to in that moment and kind of snoop on them. So there's 8 colleagues and they are there for this week-long retreat at this chalet, and it starts out sort of as this corporate retreat, but then it is revealed, and none of this is spoilers, that there is a buyout offer for the company which splits the company and the people who are there and causes a lot of strife and a lot of controversy and a lot of stuff going on between the co-workers. And then we follow Aaron and Danny, who are the 2 people who work at the chalet and are there to just sort of make sure everything goes great for the Snoop group, the Snoop group. So you get to see the guest point of view, you get to see the people who work their point of view, which I enjoy. And they are out for a little bit of a ski trip, and one of the people from Snoop does not return. And we have snowpocalypse, and we have just all sorts of messed up stuff starts going on. So I would say this is very on brand for Ruth Ware, with her mystery, with her characters. I enjoyed the work dynamic part of it. And I think if you have worked in any kind of corporate environment, even though it's not set in an office, but any kind of a dynamic between sort of a corporate cutthroat group of people, it's probably why I also enjoyed The Escape Room by Megan Golden so much. But I very much enjoyed the work dynamic of it. And then I liked the point of view of the people who worked at the chalet looking at these people like they were out of their mind. And it's just, there was so much in it that I could relate to from that point of view. And then I just liked the isolation trope of it all. I do feel like there were some moments of tension. There were some moments where I felt like it dragged a little bit. It was dragged out a bit, and I wanted maybe more of a fast-paced clip to certain things. And it wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly entertaining. And I feel like it's on brand for her as a writer, and I enjoy what she does with her characters. There's always like a bit of humor and snark to it. There is a bit of twist and turn to it. And I feel like it's one of those things where, like, if you're familiar with sort of the genre, there are things that might stick out to you more, or clues you might pick up on, or things you might resolve or figure out. But again, I'm not always in it to be lost or not be able to figure it out. So I never really intentionally go into any kind of a thriller saying like, I'm going to figure out who done it, but I enjoy the puzzle of it all. And when I can figure things out because the book plays fair, I get super excited. And when I think I figured it out, but I'm wrong, I get excited. So I just enjoy the journey of the book. And I had a good time with this one. So auto by favorite author for me, you guys know, and I'm always down for anything that she writes. So there you have it. The second book I read is The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, and this was her debut. She has another book coming out this year, and this is actually the first in a series. So this is a little bit detective, a little bit like amateurish detective, it feels in some ways, kind of like in an Ice Princess kind of a way, in that we have our main character who is a detective. She's on like a little bit of a break. She's on a little bit of a sabbatical. So her name is Ellen Warner. This takes place in the Swiss Alps, and she is going up to this resort because her brother, who she is estranged from and has a very complicated relationship, just got engaged, and he is getting engaged to someone that Ellen knows from her past. So her and her fiance have come up there to sort of celebrate. So Lori is the fiance, and she works at this very fancy hotel, which is a renovated sanatorium. So the location in and of itself has a very dark and messed up history to it all. Big time. Talk about creepy. I feel like, would you want to stay at a place that used to be a sanatorium? And what winds up happening is we get weather, once again, which is a theme in all three of these books, because that's the whole isolated trope. And Lori, the fiance, winds up vanishing without a trace. So Ellen, as even an on-sabbatical police officer, becomes in many ways sort of the go-to to try and figure out what happened to Lori. A, because it's her brother's fiance, and B, because she's sort of the only person with any level of authority who is on the scene. So as word is getting out that there's a blizzard coming, some guests start to leave. So they are not thoroughly isolated, but they are fairly isolated in the sense that nobody can get in, but they're not alone in this creepy old sanatorium, and they are really not alone in this creepy old sanatorium. So I did find that this was definitely much more of a slow burn. This was much more character driven, much more of a methodical story. This was not page turning, jump scares. I didn't find those feelings. This was just sort of like an overarching creep factor to it. And almost, although I don't feel like calling it gothic is the right way to describe it, but almost in like that creepy, atmospheric gothic way. Setting is 1,000% a character in this. The sanatorium is 1,000% a character in this. There is great commentary on sort of what the sanatorium represented in the past and how that's reflected in the present. And I'm talking a little bit cryptically on purpose, but I thought there were very interesting commentary made in Sarah Pierce's story. I very much was pulled in by her writing. And I think going into it with the expectation, knowing this is not page-turny popcorn thriller, this is definitely like a different kind of sinister. And I was creeped out by what was going on in this book. And I also think this is a case of, you know, people bring their own baggage to the situation. There is a reason Ellen is on sabbatical from her role as a police officer. And we get a lot of her history. Like I said, she has an estranged relationship with Isaac, or she is estranged from Isaac, her brother. So you get a lot of their family history. And there are a lot of factors from the past that are influencing our present. So I very much enjoyed the reveals of this. I definitely felt the isolated, claustrophobic tension of this book. And, you know, I like a book, and this again reminds me in a Jennifer Hillier way, of people who are messy, of people who make bad choices, of people dealing with consequences of the choices that they make. And I am very curious to see what she does next. I'm curious to see where her characters go, where the series goes, and where she takes us literally, like the location she takes us to next. But I thought this was definitely very creepy and well done. And I very much enjoyed how she described the sanatorium. Like, she paints such a perfect picture of the location that I could see it, I could feel it, and I felt like she just did an expert job of putting us in the physical location with our characters, that I was totally hooked by it. So love it so much. This is the UK cover, in case anyone's looking at it weirdly, with these beautiful painted edges. I have to say, total sidebar, but I was, of course, looking for books that were coming out, and I want to know why it seems to only be that the UK does special editions or like really cool editions of books, and that the US has not gotten on that bandwagon yet. Because even the paperback of this in the UK has the painted yellow edges of it, which I just think is stunning. I just feel like they know what they're doing over there. And I wish we could get some of them here. I feel like all the special editions of books in the UK have painted edges on them, and I just wish we had them here. But either way, Sanatorium, there you have it. And then the last book I read, which if you watched my second wrap up for January, you already know this, is Shiver by Ellie Reynolds. And this one, we are back in the French Alps. This is a reunion of friends who 10 years earlier had trained together over the course of a winter. They are all snowboarders. They are all Olympic hopefuls. And it is sort of the winter that changes everything. And at the end, and this is not a spoiler, at the end of their time together that first winter, one of the members of the group has gone missing. And when the book opens in present day, Saskia, who is the woman who has gone missing, was declared legally dead. And the group of her friends, the remaining people who were part of that group, wind up getting back together in a reunion back at the same location where they met all those years ago. And they all have not spoken with each other. Obviously, things went down that winter that changed all of their relationships. So they all reunite and they go back to this lodge where they had spent that time together. And I couldn't think of it when I did my January review, and I'm not going to be able to think of it now. The cable car that like brings you up to the top of the mountain, drops them off, turns around, goes back, and they realize that they are all alone at this lodge, that they have all been brought there under false pretenses, and that somebody is out to get revenge for what happened 10 years ago. So this is also 1000% And Then There Were None vibes. Ellie Reynolds talks about how it was a direct inspiration for this book, and I loved it. 1000%. This one, my whole heart, 5 stars. The dark and messed up friend group, the mystery of the past and the present. We get dual timelines in this one. We get secrets in the past and the present. I was rooting for people. I was rooting against certain people. I was suspicious of so many different people. And there's a line, I think it's in the paperback that just came out in the UK, which, mind you, I kind of want to pick up. Is anyone else obsessed with getting multiple copies of books that they love? But I think it has the tagline on it that says, like, everyone was there and one of them is a killer, something to that effect. And something happened back in the day, and someone is out for more. I thought this was so beautifully done, such expertly written story and characters. It's a huge book. I couldn't have read it faster if I tried. I couldn't put it down. It was the only place I wanted to be for the 3 days it took me to read this nearly 400-page book. And I'm obsessed. I'm absolutely obsessed with this book. There is an element of romance to this, which I wasn't aware of, which I was oddly totally fine with. That's usually not a go-to for me. I was totally in for it. Like, I completely understood these relationships, these characters. I was totally hooked by all of the past and present. She does such a great job of leaving you at the end of a chapter wanting more, like that not tropey cliffhanger kind of a way, but a completely logical, smart way to start and end different chapters where she has you wanting more. And I remember reading where somebody was saying, like, it looks big, but like, promise me when I tell you, like, you will just rip through this book super quickly, and they couldn't be more right. I loved all the reveals. I just love these characters, how cutthroat they were, how jealous they were of each other, the envy between them, the admiration that exists between them. They're all competing for the same stuff. It is hard not to be super competitive with each other, but they also manage to form these amazing friendships with one another. There is, there's love and there's hatred and there's resentment, and there is affection, and there are great feelings of memories from the past. And I just think she did a brilliant job. This is a debut novel, which again, just like blows me away to pieces. I can't believe I waited till this year to read it, but I'm so glad I did in some respects because it absolutely catapulted my reading year, I feel like. And I get to sit here and scream about how much I loved it. So brilliantly done. Absolutely, highly, hugely recommend it. Spot on. So, in retrospect, now that I'm looking at all three of the books, if I had to force rank them, and I never do any kind of force ranking or anything like that, and it's not a ding on anybody, it's not a poo-pooing on anybody, it's not anything like that, but I would say Shiver is my top choice, followed by Sanatorium, followed by One by One. And I think you get different things out of each book. So Shiver is definitely fast-paced, popcorn read. Like I said, past and present mystery, reunion of friends, sort of the dark and messed up friend group. There's so much there's claustrophobia to it. They're stuck on a mountain. Weather happens in all the books, and you can feel the claustrophobia. I was much more tense in Shiver, I feel like, than I was in the other two books. There were also moments of messiness, of characters making bad choices. You know that they're making the wrong decisions. You are yelling at them. Like I said, you're rooting for them. You're rooting against some people. But it felt very authentically honest. The people felt very real to me. It felt like people I could meet and know and be friends with. And I think it's just fast-paced, gobble it up. This is just a compulsive read that will not disappoint anybody. And then I think when you get to Sanatorium, like I said, it's much more slow burn. I'm gonna just call it gothic. It was atmospheric. It was creepy. You are not necessarily in sort of that, it's the kind of book that I feel like you want to spend your time in and absorb the words and absorb the feeling and sort of slowly work your way through it in that sense, which is not to say you can't read it in 3 days. Like I read it in a handful of days, but it was also just a much slower peeling away of what was going on. It was a slower buildup. We had a lot of kind of setting the scene that happened here, both literally with our characters as well as the scene of the sanatorium, and has like a much different perspective of, I don't want to say like the message of the book, but I feel like there was a much more reflective message to what was going on in the sanatorium. And then One by One, I feel like, again, you've got sort of that group of people who work together, definitely faster paced to begin with. I feel like One by One started off really strong and that there were definitely clues to what was going on and whether there were supposed to be, and you were supposed to pick up on them, or you weren't supposed to pick up on them so quickly. And I don't say this in a like I figured it out kind of a way, but I felt like there were more hints towards what was actually going on in One by One. And then I felt like the ending was longer than it needed to be. So I feel like sometimes a book ends so abruptly that you're like, well, oh my God, like you feel like you like stop short, like the car in front of you stops short and you jerk backwards in your car. That everything happens so quickly and you blink and you miss it and it's over. And then in the case of One by One, I feel like the ending went on for quite a long time and could have been more compacted. But the book started out really strong. And again, she's a favorite author of mine, so I still enjoyed the book, even though it was not my favorite of her books. So if you had to pick one, I would pick Shiver by Ellie Reynolds. I really would. I think it was just so good. But I loved, you know, the isolated thriller is one of my most favorite of them all. It's one of my favorite tropes. And it just makes me so excited. And I love when books of a similar story just coincidentally happen to come out at the same time. And that all three of these ladies were inspired by Agatha Christie. All three of these ladies took, here's the proof, there's only so many stories that are done. A group of people go to an isolated location in the Alps and weather arrives and you get three completely different stories and three completely different experiences. So hooray for writing, hooray for reading, hooray for storytelling. So that's going to do it for a video that I have owed you guys for a year. But let me know if you read any of these three books, which was your favorite. If you have read all three of these, what you would recommend is maybe another comp or another book that is kind of similar feels, location, vibe, all that other kind of stuff too. But thank you so much for hanging out. If you were here last year when I said I was going to do this video, thank you for still being here all this time later. And I hope everyone is doing great. So I will see you guys in another video really soon. Until then, take care, everybody. Bye.